and welcome back to another episode of It's Okay Not to Be Okay. Today we're going to be talking about ADHD, different misconceptions, any questions, and we wanted to dive a little bit more into what ADHD really looks like in children and in teens. And then in part two, we'll be able to talk about diagnosis, treatment, the difference between what it looks like with boys and girls, and how to support those who do have it. ADHD is a common neurodevelopment condition, but it also is one of the most misunderstood. And here to help us to understand it a little bit more today is our expert, Dr. Rachna Buxani.
Hi,
How are
man.
you? Hi.
Um, yes, ADHD, a big one because, and you're right. I think you put it rightly because I think it's very misunderstood. I think people, when they think of ADHD, we think of someone who's bouncing off the walls, right?
Right.
And really, then it ends over there. But it's such a nuanced disorder, and it affects so many areas of a person's life, whether it's a child, whether it's a teen, whether it's an adult. So I am glad we're talking about this.
Right, absolutely. And I'm sure some of our viewers are glad that we're speaking upon this too, because it could be teachers not knowing how to deal or parents brand new to this, which leads me to my first question that I'm sure multiple people have. Um, I guess to keep it into simple terms, how would you explain what ADHD is to a parent who's just beginning to learn about it?
Sure. So ADHD comes under the umbrella of the neurodevelopmental disorders, right? So, neuro, brain development. Okay. So, obviously we know that there's neurons, there's chemicals over there that are not, and I'm trying to put it in the easiest way possible
Right.
because I really don't want to get very techie. So it's easier for the audience to understand. But really, it's parts of the brain that govern things like activity, right?
Mhm.
The amount of activity we have. It governs executive functioning, and we'll get into what executive functioning looks like. But it's those are the kind of things that we see disrupt in a child with ADHD, right, or an adult with ADHD. The other part that I think we don't talk a lot about with ADHD is the emotional part. So there's also a component of emotional dysregulation that we see in kids, adults, teens with ADHD. So it's really, they have trouble focusing, they have trouble staying still. So there's a restlessness, and there is those executive functioning. So managing time, being disorganized. I'm not, and executive functioning. A part of that is also the emotional functioning of a person. So that is also regulated or dysregulated, especially when we see kids with ADHD. Did I make it simple enough?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
did
I'm
I
sure.
confuse you? Because I'm like, I'm trying so hard to make it simple because
Right.
it is complex, and I was trying not to get into the actual neurotransmitters and all of that. So but I hope I've made that clear.
No, I believe you've made it clear enough. And also to allow some of again, this question was specifically for parents who are brand new to this, just beginning to finally look into it. And I'm sure that answer has like helped multiple just to not to completely, but to understand a little bit more about what it is they're exactly getting into
Right.
while parents doing research and trying to help their children or any of their loved ones dealing with it. I'm sure they come across many different answers all over the internet. Are there any major misconceptions that you see about ADHD?
So I'll tell you some of the ones that I have seen, right? So, one is, especially with boys, this happens a lot with boys. It's like, okay,
Mhm.
but they're boys, like they'll grow out of it. And especially
Mhm.
if they're very hyperactive because, boys have a tendency to be more active than girls. So it's like minimizing it, right? So no, it's not a problem. They'll grow out of it. That's one misconception, because you don't really grow out of ADHD, right?
Right.
There is no cure. What it is that we teach, and we'll get to some of that when we talk about the treatment. But really, it's managing of the symptoms of ADHD, right? That's kind of what happens. So people don't grow out of ADHD. Another one is that, okay, and it's connected a lot with. So I'll have parents come to me to say, okay, but how can my child have ADHD? Because he can sit for hours and play a video game. Yes, because the video game is exactly what the ADHD brain needs, right?
Right.
So because it's stimulating, it's constantly changing, it kind of forces almost the child to keep that attention on on whatever game they're playing. So just because your child is able to focus on a video game, that doesn't mean that the other areas of their life are not disrupted, or that they are able to equally pay attention. Because what comes out of that, and which is really sad, is that, okay, if my child can play games like video games and be okay with that, then he's just being lazy, right? And so that, I think, is the biggest disservice that we are doing to kids. Because no, they're not lazy. No, they're not like, okay, I just don't want to do it. No, they actually find it extremely challenging, right? Another thing is procrastination. Okay, if he really wanted to do it, he would do it. But procrastination again comes under the umbrella of ADHD. A very big component of ADHD is people who procrastinate, and the kids who procrastinate are procrastinating over things that they find difficult, something that requires a lot of focus. That's
Right.
the things that they're procrastinating about, right? So they try to push it away, because, and think about it, if you or me found something difficult, we're not gung-ho about doing it.
Right.
That's the stuff that we're going to push away. So I think more than the misconception, I think the part that really parents need to know is that, if your child is running away from doing something, or not doing something, or is able to pay attention to video games, or something that's like TikTok and the scrolling, but not being able to pay attention or do well at school, there could be a problem. It's not, it doesn't have to be that, okay, my child is just lazy and not wanting to do it.
Right. Right. And I'm sure that answer is going to help people see their children's behavior maybe in a different way, in order to maybe help them, possibly get them evaluated and diagnosed, which we'll talk about in the next episode, of course. Um, Again, with trying to help with the benefit of their children, what do you think are some of the not most, but what do you think are some early signs of ADHD in children, in order to, help parents recognize it a little bit earlier?
Sure. Okay, so some of the things we see with children are, the obvious one is that, okay, he's just not sitting in his seat. And I keep saying he, because when we talk about the difference between boys and girls, this will become more clear. But yes, one of the things is that, okay, my child is just not sitting still, right? And
Right.
listen, there's a developmental thing. So obviously we understand that, small children are not going to sit still for X amount of time. But if this child is really just finding it difficult, because the restlessness doesn't only have to be in the form of, okay, I'm getting up and moving around, but it could be when I'm sitting, I'm just tapping my leg, right, all the
Right.
time. Or I am, taking my pen and just tapping my pen. You see, so it's that constant restlessness. It's the daydreaming, what we
Right.
or like losing focus. So I'm sitting and listening to something, but I'm really not there. So if your kid is in class and really not there, that could be definitely a sign. Impulse control, right? So if we see the kid not being able to take turns, so not being able to wait their turn to answer questions in class, or when they're with friends. If you're having a play date with your child, with some friends, and he or she is not able to wait to take turns, that could be. Also, emotional dysregulation, right? Like getting frustrated if my friend is not doing something that that I'm asking my friend to do, or I have said, now it's my turn, and now you're not, like, you need to let me do what I need to do, because otherwise my emotions get really dysregulated. So all of those could be those early signs of ADHD. And a lot of times, if it's a single child, right, at home, the parent may miss it, right? So to pay attention to what teachers are talking about at school, because teachers will pick it up, especially because they have 20-25 kids that they're dealing with at the same time. So this kid will stand out in terms of, okay, you're blurting out stuff, you're not waiting your turn, you're getting emotionally dysregulated, you're not able to follow directions, you're kind of just in another world when I'm trying to teach in class. So all of those things can be seen by teachers, or with the parent who maybe is having play dates, to see those interactions with other children.
Right. Perfect. And thank you so much for explaining that. I'm sure, again, this is helping clarify so many different questions and helping parents understand a little bit more about what they're dealing with and how to even recognize, hey, maybe I need to help my child a little bit more. Um, Specifically on children, I mean, some parents aren't able to catch it at a younger age. But maybe they can notice it, they're preteens, they're teenagers, middle school, high schoolers, which I'm sure is still difficult to catch.
Yes.
Um, how can ADHD, or does ADHD look different with children versus teenagers?
So, as a general theme, what we've seen is that the hyperactive element as the child grows older is what starts diminishing, right?
Mhm.
So there's three hallmark characteristics when we think about ADHD. So there's hyperactivity, there's impulsivity, and there is so the inattention part is so the inattention and the impulsive part actually remains, right? The
Mhm.
hyperactive part is what we see kind of come down, even as teenagers, and then when they move into adulthood, the hyperactive part is what we see coming, becoming
Yes.
better, right? They
Right.
become less restless. In teens, we see a lot of procrastination. We see a lot of the whole daydreaming, like, okay, my mind is just wandering off. We see the lack of organization. If you go into a teen's bedroom who has ADHD, oh my gosh, you've just entered a war zone, because there's things everywhere, like there's chaos everywhere. You'll see your teen not be able to do homework without having some noise. They almost need something else going on to be able to focus
Mhm.
on what they're doing in terms of homework. We'll see that emotional dysregulation piece that we've been talking about. So we will see them struggle with that. We'll see them struggle with finishing their stuff on time, their schoolwork on time. So a lot of it has to do with, again, that executive functioning piece that shows up a lot amongst teenagers, because it is that organizing. And as we grow older, the expectation is that, okay, now you're in middle school, now you're in high school, you should be able to take care of your own stuff, right?
Right.
That's where they falter. They can't organize themselves, they can't pay attention, or pay attention enough, or keep their focus enough in school or at home to be able to get stuff done. So they're always forgetting things. I know parents who've had to be like the personal assistants of their kids who have ADHD, because it's like, okay, have you done this? Did you do that? Did you get this done? So we see parents do that a lot to compensate for some of these things that the preteens are going through.
Right. Thank you so much. I'm sure it's hard, teenagers going through a rough patch of their life, different emotions, feelings everywhere. On emotions and feelings, how do emotions play into ADHD?
So we see, there's a lot of studies that have found a correlation between mood disorders and ADHD,
Mhm.
right? So when we think about mood disorders, we think about anxiety, we think about depression, and there's a huge comorbidity that we see. So people with ADHD also tend to struggle a lot with anxiety, right? So when now how anxiety can show up can be very different. So anxiety can show up as aggression. Anxiety can show up as, oh my gosh, I'm just going to curl up into a ball and I'm going to sleep because I don't want to talk to anyone. So it can seem more like a person is depressed, right?
Mhm.
So these are, when we see kids with ADHD or teens or adults getting dysregulated, it comes really from a place of that anxiety playing out, and then them not being able to understand how to manage that anxiety. And so feeling extremely dysregulated. And think about it, right? So again, this is hypothesis, that if I'm constantly procrastinating, if I'm falling behind, and then now things are piling up, of course I'm going to be anxious, right? Because
Right.
I mean, in my head, I know I need to get this done. I haven't been able to get this done. Oh my gosh, and then we go down the catastrophizing. Oh my gosh, I'm going to be a failure. I'm not going to be able to do this. And what is wrong with me? And so we also see a lot of self-esteem issues with kids and teens with ADHD, because they can't understand, okay, why am I not able to do this? Because people with ADHD, kids, teens, that are very smart. It is not an IQ problem. Very creative, super smart, right? Can have IQs that are actually at the gifted level, but they can still have ADHD.
Right.
So for them, it's so difficult to understand, why am I not able to do this? What is going on, right? So that is and then that weighs into their self-esteem. So then when I don't feel good about myself, guess what? Then I start feeling depressed, right? So these are the emotional sort of effects of ADHD, or what we see goes kind of hand in hand with ADHD in teens, especially teens.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Buxani. I am sure that you answered, multiple different questions and concerns for different parents, for children and teens, and trying to understand a little bit more on what exactly ADHD is. Yeah, like as mentioned before, next episode will be about diagnosis, evaluation, difference between boys and girls, treatment, support, in order to continue helping parents who still don't quite understand how to take these next further steps. But
Absolutely. Looking
yeah,
forward.
thank you so much, Dr. Buxani. You have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.